For those of you that have followed me for any amount of time on any one of my social media accounts, you know that I have a little bit of a minor obsession with rainy days. And today has been a beautiful one. It's been really kind of nice also knowing that, hey, it's raining and the basement studio is not going to flood. That's wonderful. Oh my God, man. Oh my God. Oh my God. I finally have started to get more and more into the zone of stabilizing what I need to do. I've done a few things that I hadn't really thought I was going to be pulling off. Hold on. We've probably got some volume on it. One of the things that I had kind of encountered was that I'd always been a little bit resistant to the idea of blocking out time. Now, it's not been perfect, okay? I'm going to say it's not been. But there's been a lot of things. So I use the calendar app on my phone, or a calendar app. And because I think the one I'm using is Google. And so I use a lot of the reminders on there. And there's been a couple things that I've had to customize. And maybe someday when I'm pretty sure this works out, I'll just share some of the little things that I do. There's no tips or tricks necessarily. It's just sort of the way I'll format things so that there's a sort of, so that there is a visible and viable format for feeling accomplished. And I'll just kind of run an idea by you guys real quick of what I did, and maybe this could work. If you use these digital calendars and you're not writing things down, one of the problems I've often had, and one of the reasons why for many years I wanted to find a developer and maybe another graphic designer or somebody, just anybody else creative that was willing to come together and create either a very small business oriented or specifically a calendar aimed at creatives with goal-oriented aspects to it. Now, I imagine there may be some apps out there that come close. I know I've looked. I've never found anything like that on either Android or Apple. I had to try and find a way for this to work for myself. And so one of the things that I always concern myself is, like, I honestly will forget when I've posted to certain social media and what exactly that content was. It's far too easy to become repetitive, to just restate the same sort of thing. And I found myself falling into that whole rut many times. I tried using notebooks. I tried, whenever I would journal, I tried to make that work, but I don't journal daily. This particular effort, daily, I always felt like I was in danger of falling right back into what I had subsequently spoken about. So that was all stuff I just didn't want to have to mess with. The more I thought about it, I was like, I just need a simpler way to do it. So one of the things I do is that I will block out my time. And with people that I've spoken to about this, whenever they ask me, well, how do you organize your day? And I bring it up, there's a lot of like, I don't want to do that. Blocking out time to me just seems like the worst thing to do. I'm absolutely one of those people that can be so busy that I can't get shit done. And I think most of you will probably know what I'm talking about. If it's not something that you go through, you probably know somebody going through it. The reason it's really hard for me to adhere to that is because, and this is uniquely my own situation and issue. I'm not a fan of sticking to a schedule. I don't like feeling like I'm being locked down in any particular way. It makes it extremely hard for me to feel creative, to feel free to make decisions. I ran across this the other day, actually trying to do some client work. I completely froze up. And it was really hard for me to get back in the swing of things. Now, sure, I could do the overanalyzation and go into this whole avenue of thought where I'm like, well, it's because of the jobs I worked at. I've got to push through it. Well, pushing through it doesn't always work for people. It just doesn't. It certainly doesn't for me. But what I can do is break down the time the best I can. And everything I'm about to tell you isn't anything that you're not hearing from a ton of other people who are either career or life coaches or just artists trying to organize their lives. You can drop any one of these things I'm about to tell you into YouTube and find probably thousands of people claiming to have solved how to stay productive through all kinds of things. I simply do this one thing. God, it even sounds so markety even when I'm saying it like that. But what I do is, no matter what it is, I'm either setting a reminder or a task or an event. If it's an event, I'll say, hey, I plan on drawing from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. So what I do is, because of the fact that type on any of the apps can also utilize emojis, I just searched for either a check or an X. I prefer the X. And I just put a red X at the front of it once that event is done. Then it feels like I did go do that was taken care of. In my mind, I know I went and did the thing. I drew, or I attended a show, or I whatever, right? But when I put that small X on there, then it makes all the sense in the world to me. And there's a small sense of satisfaction that I didn't get before. Because when I look back at a month, when I go to the month view, I suddenly see a bunch of X's where things did get accomplished. And I don't have to second guess myself as to whether or not, well, did I send an invoice? Did I get this thing done for this person? And it's started to help me get more organized in a way I hadn't really thought was really going to work. But it makes sense. I'm a designer. I'm a creative. I am a visual person. Little nuances like that help me out. At first, I was going to start trying to figure out where I was putting my social media on my whiteboard. That was a mess. It took 2 hours for me to figure out that was terrible. It was never going to work. I had no real way of tracking a year. And I didn't want to write everything down. And I didn't want to put it in an Excel document either. So what I ended up doing was I chose a color. And in this case, I chose graphite, since it was just something where I was like, all my social media is going to fall under it. And I'll literally write out TikTok hyphen, and then what the title basically was of the video. So if I talked about, like my last video was going to the Burr Oaks conservation site. And it's just a woodland path with a nice little conservation building and everything to look at. The fun little video that I made. But I wanted to remember that, yes, I had done that. And not in that case, that wasn't an easy thing to forget about, but maybe next year I would forget about it. And at least this was something where I would be able to take that information and eventually put it into an Excel document and start controlling the content that I'm making, so I'm not repetitive, so I'm not doing the same shit over and over again. And this isn't knocking any other creators, but there is a lot of repetitiveness, reactionary videos, the same thing over and over again. And there is a particular demographic, there is a market for that. But I didn't want to do that with what I was making, so that it had truly reviewable life, so that it was something that I could also upload onto YouTube, remix from, and create other avenues for myself to present it. Maybe even at shows as a form to say, hey, this is the kind of content you can see if you follow me on these different platforms or any one of them. So when I did that, not only did it help me start to organize where I had posted things, what I had posted, but it was also helping me knock out events, like if I went to a meeting or if I had a project that was due. I always used, there's a task one in there that's always this weird burnt sienna sort of orange, and that's the one that I check off for invoices. So whenever I send an invoice, I put the invoice number on there, the amount, and who I send it to, and I leave a note as to what else may be happening with it, or if the project's complete or not. Those little things have helped me out big time. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because of the fact that I had a few people that asked me, am I doing okay and everything? And I guess I freaked out a few people, which I didn't mean to, if that was the case. It's just simply one of those things where I got overwhelmed and inundated by so much in life recently that it's become a challenge to stay connected with people a lot. There are many times no matter what's going on, I'll have work come up out of nowhere, and that can ruin weekend plans. That can ruin, I have forgotten to reply back to people, stuff like that. And I know that there's other people out there that are going through the same thing. So hopefully some of this was helpful in maybe trying to get your own stuff organized and figured out, because it can be a real shit show. And yeah, but when I went to the, if you're following me on TikTok, you can watch the video there, but it was in the conservation place was in Blue Springs, Missouri, for those of you out of state. And yes, I know I live here in Missouri, and I know that politically it is turning into a shit show, but I am also going to tell you that there are a lot of decent people here. A lot of my neighbors are very good people. A lot of Kansas City and Columbia and St. Louis and a lot of other places are pretty decent people. So yes, there are some loud jackasses and there are some people doing some damage, but yeah, it's not a terrible state. And Independence is a fucking awesome town if you really want it to be. And if you're one of those decent people, regardless of how you think, you know, politically or otherwise, if you are a decent person and you believe in people, you know, living their lives the way they want to, which is kind of a loaded remark, right? Then you'll find that there's quite a few people that are okay. Now, I say that, and I mean, I won't go into this too much, but there are certainly people that, you know, are miserable and don't really want that sort of thing for everyone. But that's something that, like, I've been trying, like, at the same time that I have to back away from social media, there's been this whole thing where I'm like, well, I still need to be on there so that I can promote myself and talk about things. I have been doing a healthy amount of blocking accounts. And, you know, some people might say, well, you're just blocking that out and you're not even dealing with it. Well, yeah, no, that's very true. Not only for my mental health, but just because I can't spend that much time online worrying about that sort of stuff. I mean, I've got content to make, I've got jobs to finish, and especially now with catching up with these things, I am brutally aware that I need to reinvigorate finding new clientele to bring on board so that I can, you know, continue to pay bills and do things. And that's been a really hard twist for me because, you know, some things got blown out of the water. I had meant to, this is totally true. I had everything set up with the exception of one or two things for going live on Twitch, which was the next avenue I was going to go down. And we had freaking internet outages all along this street. And I was like, that's just terrible. And it was all at night. It was when I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do that in the evening and it won't be a big deal. It turns out that I'm probably going to have to start streaming during the day. I'm going to give it a shot anyway and just see what happens. The plan was supposed to have been today, as opposed to doing this video. I was supposed to be going live playing an indie game called Thor, not related to the MCU at all. And it was just a demo that had finally come out that I've been waiting on. It was really cool. It looks to be a really cool action platformer. I've not even opened up the app. I downloaded the free demo and I'm like, hey, I'll give that a shot. But that didn't happen. So we'll see how the rest of this weekend goes. And one of the things too that's been really nice has been just being able to slow down and take things apart, you know, and put them to the side. And what really helped too, and I can't stress this enough, there's so many times in life that we may think we are bored or we don't have the time to do things. There is an invaluable amount that can be said about taking just 3 to 4 hours out of your week to indulge yourself on something that will reward you. And that could be anything from, I picked up at Aldi, there was this freaking awesome little Lego set. It was just sitting over by itself, overlooked, and I'm like, you're a little classic car. It's like 59 pieces. This will be like 10 or 15 minutes of joy and fun, and then he's going to join the rest of my Lego sets over here on the display case. But it gives me a moment to slow down, to, you know, separate out the pieces and bricks, and then just have fun with that. Recently, I've been doing, I think I talked about this on, no, I'm getting my media mixed up. There you go. See, I don't even remember sometimes what I did talk about, but I had started doing some custom work just to, you know, maybe possibly sell some of my other works that I have. I've been going through a bunch of other substrates and things. I have like old vinyl toys and plastic toys and stuff like that that were specifically meant to be art toys. So they're blanks that you can paint on. And I've got a number of them that I've got to go through. I've got to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to paint this? What am I doing? Is there any ideas coming up for this? And then on top of that, there's also, you know, all of this other stuff that I would often mistake as personal time for myself, but it wasn't. It really wasn't. What it was me just kind of pushing myself to the side and staying busy so I didn't want to think about anything. Well, that's not great either. And so I made up my mind that, you know, every week I was going to try and do at least 4 hours that were just for me. Just something where I could, whether it was, and this, it did not include things like, you know, taking care of the cats and dogs or cleaning or anything. It wasn't anything like that. There was a time for that. There are times now because of time blocking that I can go, okay, this is when I get dishes done. This is when I'm doing the laundry. This is when I'm going to do yard work. This is when I'm gardening. This is when I'm running errands, whatever. And I'm breaking it down. It's not been easy. I am so annoyingly, insufferably hard to get down with a pattern like that. Although I crave patterns because of the OCD aspects that I have. And then on top of that, what's really screwball is I enjoy the fact that I've given myself permission, and this is some deep, dark, fucked up shit here, giving myself permission to be able to do things. And I think I did in the last journal, I talked about that book dealing with, immature parenting versus adult children. And the concept seems fucked up, but if you guys get a chance to read it, you'll understand what I'm getting at. There are moments in the book that made me realize that I've held myself back on a lot of things or resisted things like change and even organization, whether it was jobs, personal, hobby, whatever. And then I feel like I never have time. And this was actually when I was still working a very corporate job full time. It dawned on me that the stupidest thing in my life was that I had no time to be able to enjoy anybody else's company, just free up time to go do something. But I also had to understand that there were times I would push myself into a scenario where maybe here's a perfectly good example. I might end up going to a comic show of some kind, right? Well, I only went because it was the thing to do, and it ripped me out of stuff that I had to get done. Where if I hadn't gone to the show, I would have saved money, I wouldn't have put more miles on the truck, I wouldn't have had to do any number of things that I thought, well, but at the end of the day, even if I picked up something cool or got a chance to see people, which sometimes is nice and works out, I didn't have the ability to separate that out and hold myself back on certain things. Here's a really good example. Today I saw online, I saw a post for a small toy art sort of pop culture, let's just call them a pop culture convention because that's what they're turning into anymore. And it was in Sedalia. Now, Sedalia is about 2 hours drive from here. And I mean, when I was younger, they'd never had them there or anything else like that. And the advertising, from what I can tell, was a Facebook page and some flyers. I didn't know anything about it. And yet, because it would happen today from 10 to 5, and it's well after 5 now, I was a bit remiss. I had fear of missing out. I couldn't believe it. I was like, well, what if that thing, that holy grail I was looking for, something? Now, first of all, I've been hit with so much financial strain right now that it doesn't even fucking matter. I couldn't have bought anything if I wanted to. I probably couldn't in all rights have really allowed myself to afford to pay the $2 cover charge to get into the show, because I've got plenty of other things I've got to do. And one of the things that's happened was when I saw that show, I thought to myself, like, why was my knee-jerk reaction that, wow, I missed out on the show, I should have gone, that sort of thing. And I was able to understand that in some circumstances, I will absolutely push myself into another avenue to not deal with the responsibilities that I have. Unfortunately, what that does is, both professionally and even emotionally, if I'm being very frank about it, it'll put me into a different zone of thought where, it's almost like, you ever known those people that it's like, well, that's a next Tuesday problem. That's what it does to me. And I don't enjoy that at all. It puts me in a weird circumstance where all I can think to myself is, okay, so I went and I did this thing or whatever. Now I have less money. Now I'm not sure how this is going to work. And one thing after another. And it got so bad that I was just berating myself consistently. It was just shitty. But one of the things I had to remind myself was, okay, I'm the one doing a lot of this to myself. Yes, I could blame a lot of previous trauma, a lot of other things. Sure, absolutely. That's viable, okay? It really is. Talk to any therapist, they're probably going to tell you the same sort of thing. But there is a point where I had to look at it and go, okay, that's fine, but at some point I had to be able to take enough responsibility. Now, I understand this doesn't go for everybody. There are some people that they are dealing with shit far beyond anything that I could even begin to understand or relate to. So I get it. I do. But I'm talking about my own experiences. So I just want to put that caveat out there before somebody would just like, motherfucker, and start coming at me. I know that the better that I've been able to organize myself and to stay in a more positive zone, because I've been trying to cut out more negative stuff from my life. I'm very aware of negative things in life. I just try not to think about them too much. Something I had been, talking about was, even just wondering like how this is tentatively, I've got some shows lined up for much later in the year. But what that doesn't do is it doesn't help anything right now. So I'm in a tizzy trying to make sure that like I've switched all the links everywhere to my Gumroad store, that I'm going to start making videos about that. Part of the reason has been trying to clean up the studio again, because when I get really stressed, everything falls apart. And I've been trying to find paperwork. I had a debacle. This was a bad one where some numbers didn't match on the taxes, and that was scary. Somebody said that I made far more money than I did. And that did not go well. That was not good, because had they filed that would have been some shit. And I got really freaked out. And right now I'm still worried about it. And being a freelancer who should be paying their taxes every quarter, that scares the shit out of me. Like, well, is that going to throw another big old punch at me? I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, so this has turned out to be easier than I thought it was going to be. At first, I was freaking out, going, "Oh, I don't even know what the hell I'm going to talk about." But yeah, so hopefully by the next time, this next weekend, I will have gone live on Twitch by then. That is the hope, and I'm going to push forward to get that done. But yeah, and so there's a lot of different things that I'm going through that I've been trying to look at, like as far as like even how I'm presenting myself online. I have been struggling with how the presentation of my YouTube channel looks, the video content that I need to make on there, just different stuff like that. Somebody pointed out, which is true, I've never made this sort of video before, but somebody was saying, well, what is your channel about? And I thought, I'm an idiot. YouTube actually has it to where when you get there, there is a welcome introduction sort of video thing you can have automatically play that will explain what your channel is about. And not unlike I'm running my mouth on this video, I could run my mouth in a 5-minute video and go, here's what I'm going to be fucking talking about on these things. But I just haven't. That's probably something I should do tonight now that I'm thinking about it. But that's been the big challenge, is putting something together like that and staying consistent. And I'm hoping that with a little modicum of organization that I've started to pursue, I can start to get my life back in check. One of the things, and this was a real hard conversation that I had with a buddy of mine not that long ago. And he was relating another conversation where one of the problems is that, and I'm probably going to end it on this. One of the problems that a lot of times creatives will have is that if we aren't our own worst enemy, expectations of others can be. And I'll give it to you the way that I see it and what I've gone through. A lot of times there are days when I simply just need time to think and just get things done. I don't aim to be antisocial. I don't aim to be much more withdrawn or even hermit-like. But if I don't, then there is a lack of time spent on projects. There's a lack of time spent on practice. There's a lack of time spent on developing things and from a marketing angle, from a creation standpoint. And like he was saying, there's a lot of times that you can show up at a show and you suddenly got like, people that come to the show are like, whoa, he's got like 18, 20 new pieces. And what they don't realize is that wasn't 18 minutes. That wasn't maybe even 18 hours. Those were probably weeks or months worth of work. Redoing, reassessing, recombining, recreating mistakes, successes, problems, challenges, messages. And it can seem like a very cool thing to be able to do, and it is. It is. I wouldn't be trying as hard as I am in a lot of ways if this wasn't fun. But it's also amazingly hard to do sometimes. And I think most creatives can kind of apply toward that in some way. I know that the biggest challenge that I've encountered has been when I talk to other people about their jobs and stuff. And, there's a lot of people that still work in offices or they do whatever, and that's fine. It's what they want to do. That's cool. But there's a weird zone that, especially if you're talking to another freelancer or a graphic designer or, you know, commercial artist, whatever, anybody in that zone, even an actor or a musician, oh Jesus, especially those guys, you will find that when other people have time off, you just don't. You know, those are the weekends that you're diving into something and you don't have freelance clients, you don't have other problems, you're not working through, you know, household stuff. You end up just in this zone where you're like, well, now I've got a whole Saturday that I've really got to hammer through some stuff, or I am behind on a project and I left it for the weekend because there wasn't anything else to do. And he told the story about how, you know, he never really went to the movies that much. And I thought, wow, I'm very much in that camp. I do go to the movies. I do like going, but I'll only go on, of all days, I'll go on a Tuesday normally, if there's a movie out I want to see because it's cheaper and that sort of thing. AMC has some decent prices on those days. But what he was getting at was that, you know, his friends wanted to go on like Saturday night. So they wanted the whole thing of like, hey, let's meet up around 4, maybe get some drinks. You know, maybe we'll go to the movies and we'll get over there about 6:30. So it gives us all enough time to get popcorn and bullshit and, you know, pay $57 for a 2-ounce drink, whatever, and then go get our seats, sit down, watch the movie, and then maybe afterward go get appetizer, or just whatever, right? And these aren't 20-year-olds. These aren't even 30-year-olds. These are people in their 40s and 50s. And I'm not one to sit here and say that that's a shitty night. That sounds kind of cool, depending on what you're doing. But I do understand that there is only so much time that we truly have. And so you kind of have to pick and choose what you're capable of doing in that time. At the exact same time, I am also saying that you should make time to be able to do things. Unfortunately, scheduling will not always agree with that. One of the clients that I don't do work for anymore, the work always spilled over into the most inopportune times. I cannot tell you guys how many times I would get a change back at 5, 6 p.m. because that's when it was. That's when it came in. There was no real reason. It was just the client didn't get to it until after they were done with their work, and they were sitting there working until 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. So I get it. Well, I don't have the luxury necessarily of waiting till the next day, or at least I didn't believe I did at the time. I would throw myself into it and end up working through the night, and I'd be up between 10 to 4 o'clock. It's actually how I really first started watching Twitch and YouTube late at night and stuff, and Netflix was my best friend. And, you know, you kind of get used to that, but then you're ending up waking up the next day. You don't even get up until 11 or 12 when most people are already at work or whatever, or eating lunch, and I'm just like getting up going, fuck, I should probably get the fuck up out of bed. Like, the sun is at high noon. And because of that, it makes it really hard I run across this a lot where there are times that I've missed out on things that I'm like, well, yeah, but, you know, honestly, I'm not able to do that. You know, and it could be anything from a show to hanging out with people to whatever. And I thought about this for a while. I really did. For a little while, I was like, well, I need to get out of doing graphic design. And I'm going to get back to that here in just a moment, because that is something I thought about. And it really was wrecking me because I wasn't functioning right. My quality of work was going downhill. This is all stuff I covered in previous entries. And I really had to make some decisions. You know, I walked away from some job offers and some other opportunities that I didn't follow up with or even say yes to because I didn't think that I had it in me to accomplish what would be expected of me. Because I understood that not only was the quality of what I was capable of putting out declining, I wasn't happy. In fact, I'm still not happy on a lot of that. So it makes it hard. And what could take me maybe a couple of hours to do one thing is now taking me 6 to 8 hours as I try to relinquish, you know, the issues that I have at hand and work through them. And there's a whole bunch of more shit behind that I'm not going to get into. But I did come to realize that it wasn't that I hated doing graphic design. I still do graphic design for myself. I still create things. That fucking degree back here is in commercial art. Okay, specifically illustration, but I could have made a whole nother degree in graphic design if I really wanted to. And it made me realize that because I felt I didn't have the control, I didn't have the organization that I was speaking of at the beginning of this video. Look at me like a fucking professional bringing this shit all the way around. Because I didn't have that, because I wasn't willing to give myself the permission to either say no or control my time the way I thought, I would often suffer through things. And quite frankly, having 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night to do what? What am I trying to prove? Is there ever going to be a point in my life where when I'm on my deathbed someday, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I should have sent an extra fucking PDF because of this typo or this thing. No, it does mean that I should do my job well and on as excellent of a basis as I can, but I don't owe my life to a career unless it's something that's fulfilling and everything I want it to be. That said, I can still do a job, be good at it, earn money, and make it work. But I had to be able to give myself the personal space to keep personal time and professional time separate, and also have respect enough for my own existence, right? When I ate, when I slept, how I worked, what downtime I had, whatever. And be able to apply that daily. And then I would realize, okay, well, there's more to life that I can really enjoy, that I can pursue, that I can go down that path with. Because even though I was behind on some stuff, and I still am, right? It made sense to go out for a walk. I needed that health walk. I needed to get out. I needed to walk around the conservation area, and I got to see some cool things. And I made a TikTok out of it, and it was just really rad. My inner child kind of ran around for a while. And that's been something that I've really been indoctrinated with for a long time. Ever since I got my first corporate job was, work. You can retire when you're 55. Now you can retire when you're 65. And now it looks like they're pushing for people to retire when they're 75. If fucking ever. I went to a Hardee's the other day that the person that served me, granted, I understand there's some people that are like, well, I just like to work. I get that. I have met like the dude that I met at the hardware store. I made a video about that a while back, and he was really cool, and he was like, I'm probably going to retire around 70 and everything. And I thought, yeah, that's great, but I mean, I hope you got some travel, and I hope you did some other stuff. I hope you had adventures before your fucking knees decide they don't want to. That's the problem. And it's something that I am hyper aware of, right? So, and I guess that's the thing that, like, when I hear people talk about that, I understand, like, not everyone has all the money in the world. Sure as fuck, I don't. But I do have a drive, and I do have a desire to see more and do more in life. But to do that, I've got to organize the other shit that isn't always the most fun. And it did drive me to understand that it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't enjoying graphic design. I didn't enjoy how I was accomplishing that graphic design, and I didn't understand why at first until I was honest with myself. I am not annoyed by an art supply. I am not annoyed by a computer. I am not driven to despair by a layout necessarily or something. Those are challenges that if I let myself be realistic with myself, I'm fine with. The problem was, quite frankly, clientele. And it hurts to say that because you can enjoy working for somebody for the most part, but there will be things that will knock you off your game enough that it makes it hard. Now, out of respect for that client, as long as everything's pretty kosher, you also have to know, as I had to do, when the fuck to pull back from that and just kind of walk away, let it set, and then come back. Because if I wasn't in the right mental state to do things, my work was going to be shitty regardless of how I felt. And this was definitely a circumstance where once I kind of got the last project done, I took a breather, and I was still doing some other graphic design that I owed and needed to get done, and some other projects that are still happening. But I became very aware as the work has now started to dwindle down to the last few things and working through these things, and I have more free time to be able to now engage in the other stuff that I have to get done that was never even part of that initial workload, my own work, that I may not be getting paid for right now, but is still certainly necessary. And that's everything from the writing, the graphic design, the illustration, the publication, there's just a whole bunch of shit to it. Well, I owe myself that to get that done. And that's usually the first thing that most people never really realize, is how much actual work goes into something to make that happen. It's often insurmountable and overwhelming. That's why one of the kindest things you can tell an artist if you see them at a show somewhere is, wow, I love your tent. I love your table setup. This is amazing. This is a great setup. And then if you can, drop a couple bucks, buy something small from them, or maybe buy something big and grand and splurge on yourself so you can awaken that part of you that wants to enjoy life as well. I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to get back to watching the rest of the Dark Crystal, which has been playing back here in the corner. Did you guys notice that? I kind of wonder, this is kind of a weird experiment to see if, like, this is free on YouTube right now. It's got ads, but it got an ad blocker, so, But I don't know if any ads have been playing, because I haven't really been watching the corner, because that's weird. If I'm not looking at the camera, I'm looking over here, and that would be all fucked up. But I fucking love this movie. This is so great. It's free with ads, and I was like, oh, that's right. I've got it on DVD, but I don't care. Like, I don't have to get the DVD out and wear it out or anything else like that. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching another entry. I sincerely appreciate it. And, yeah. As I said in the last video, I will make announcements when I can about the other shows coming in the future. There's a couple reasons why I can't say anything about them yet, but when I do, and when I find out more about them and what exactly is going on, I will let you guys know, because I think it'll be pretty cool. And the only one that I think, well, I think I can come out and say this, is Free State in Lawrence I will be doing. That one I've already kind of checked on, and as far as I know, knock on wood, I'm in that one. And then I've still got to find out about the Greater Kansas City Japan Festival. That show was a fucking blast last year. That is the one that saved my goddamn goat. If I hadn't done that show, I probably would have just been like under a bridge somewhere, like shedding tears and drinking or some shit. It was bad. But no, I was amazed. I was blown away. It's the first show where I sold as much art as I did. I was wholly unprepared for that. The reproductions I sold, the books I sold, I ran out of comic books. I don't normally do that at a show. And that one I did. And I had just ordered brand new books. That's why that was so shocking to me. I couldn't believe how many they bought. So now there's a rush to get my other book, which is about 90 pages, I think, to go. And repurposing my other books that I've got to get out there into new formats. All of that's a challenge, and all of that takes time. It's just the stuff that I rarely ever talk about, because I don't always have something to show until the book happens. Thank you so much for watching, guys. You can find me on all kinds of social media. TikTok for now, or at least until the government decides to take it down on the state or the federal level. You can find me on Twitter, although most of the time, nobody really engages with me on there. And that's okay. It's kind of a weird shit show ever since Elon Musk took it over. I am on Facebook. I do have a Facebook page under the Artisan Rogue, as with everything else. You can find me on the very odd social media site Stimulus. That's kind of a thing, I think, or at least they're trying to make it happen. I think it's Sticker Mule is the company that owns them. And it's kind of fun, but there's not a lot of real things going on there. And if you look below in the links, you'll find all that stuff. But you'll also find the link to my Gumroad store, which I am adding more stuff to all the time. And that is really kind of cool. And I can assure you, for those of you that have never heard of Gumroad, it is a very cool site. Lots of legitimate, everyone seems to be legitimate on there. So I hope you guys give that a look, and then give a look around. I know it's not the easiest website to search. I have so many things I want to talk about on how that whole website is structured and navigation, but that's not my circus. I'm not going down that fucking route. I just hope I get some sales on there eventually, because it is very different than Etsy, and I realize how much I have to push my marketing a lot to get any ground on there. So thanks so much for watching, and once again, I'll see you this next weekend when I do another video talking about God knows what the fuck. See you guys later.